Hello, hello, you big, beautiful world. I am King RP, host of Brothers of Many Words. I am life. I am energy. I am the possibility of what come next. Moving with purpose, speaking with power, and becoming more every day.
What up, what up, what up? I am co-host King Mackie, better known as Haru the Great. Call me necessary.
Right on, right on. I'm your co-host, King Christopher. I'm here to recognize truth, evaluate the path, leverage discipline, and implement through action.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. King Mac, hit us with that affirmation, brother.
Brother Meaning Words affirmation is we stand together as brothers, united in purpose and grounded in respect. We move with love, speak with clarity, and carry peace. No ego, no division, only growth. Each voice matters. Together we build something together. We are aligned. We are ready. Peace in our energy, power in our unity, and purpose in our message. It is done.
It is
It is
done.
done. It is done. Welcome all to a Sunday Book Club powered by Brothers of Many Words. This is a weekly space for meaningful reading, honest conversation, cultural insight, personal growth, and deeper understanding. Each book becomes a doorway into wisdom, history, identity, discipline, purpose, and transformation. This year's topic is the origins of religion, a subject that is not only historical, but deeply powerful, passionate, and alive with meaning. We are currently discussing this book, African Glory, by author J.C. DeGraff Johnson. J.C. DeGraff Johnson. We'll be discussing chapters 14 through 16 here today. But before we move on, I'm going to hit us with a few words of inspiration.
Let's hear him, brother.
Real life becomes deeper when you remember that the origins of Africa are not distant history, but the beginning of humanity's long walk through struggle, survival, and becoming. To search your soul is to recognize that your story is tied to ancient footsteps, resilience, and breath. Africa reminds us that life began in endurance, not ease, and that within every hardship lives memory, dignity, and purpose. When you know where humanity began, you carry yourself with humility, strength, and reverence. Beautiful words right there. Beautiful
Yes, sir.
words
Yes,
right
sir.
there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, how's everybody doing on this fine day?
Loving life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Woke up, the sun is shining.
Yes, it is. A little cloudy here. It stormed last night and this morning too, as
Yeah,
well down here.
yeah. It was a little stormy this morning too, but it's sun is shining now.
Yes,
Yeah, it
sir.
stormed all night.
Yeah, it did.
It did.
Yeah, it did.
You know, it's almost like we go through the same weather patterns. You know, when it's raining there and it's raining here, and it's wild because you guys are in Missouri and I'm in Texas. So just the length of that storm reaches that distance is amazing.
800 miles?
Yeah.
Yes, it just the storms are just popping up out of nowhere. Matter of fact, I thought I heard something about the Tornado Alley.
Hmm.
Tornado Alley has been moved in a sense, and it's
Really?
going further up into Midwest Missouri.
Wow. 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 That's interesting. That's interesting. All right. All right. Last week we discussed chapters 11 through 13. 11 through 13, just to give a little bit of a recap. Chapter 11 was the end of the West African empires. It covered the succession of rulers after Askia the Great, Europe's role in North Africa, referencing Queen Elizabeth's secret negotiations with both sultans of Morocco, playing both sides, if you will, the murder of Askia Ashak II by his own people, the continued battles between the Songhai and the Moroccan empires. Chapter 12 was the prelude to West African discoveries. So it referenced the term dark continent in its meaning, to see voyages around Africa, the dispute between the French and the British of who was there first, the restrictions on humanity and the persecutions, the legend of Presbyter John, and it ended with and speaking of Prince Henry the Navigator, chapter 13, chapter title was The Portuguese in West Africa. That chapter covered how the word fetish came to be. The tribal leaders pushed back to the Portuguese wanting to live there permanently, and how the chiefs gave in due to the threats of the Portuguese, and they immediately built a fort. There was much opposition from surrounding tribes, and then the use of Christianity as a means to gain control of the people. Today, African Glory, we are discussing chapters 14 through 16. 14 through 16. We're almost done with the book. We got these 3 chapters and we got one more, and that'll be it for this great book here. So, chapter 14. The Portuguese in the Congo. The Portuguese in the Congo. That is on page 134. Let's get into it, Kings. What we got?
I mean, this one, the author just opens up the chapter was saying that the Congo was they had trade, they had civilization way before the Europeans got there. We have our key people, Dorado Lopez. A lot of the accounts come from Dorado Lopez, who was a traveler in the area, and later on, a European got hold of his writings and transcribed that. That's where we get that from.
Yeah, yes. He gave his narrative on how he described the Congo was very, very good. And again, traveling back then, it was walking in boats. There was no, and maybe chariots, but there was no cars. These guys did extensive training with much less means of transportation than what we have today, for sure.
And you think about that, like, we don't really explore anymore much compared to how everything back then was exploring.
So, how much is there left to explore outside of Antarctica? And I know there's still places, but back then it was wide open.
There's places in the Amazon that we can't go to because the tribes there would just kill us.
That's true. This is true.
We can't even reach them. People try to reach them and they just start throwing spears at them.
Right. That's a great point.
Chapter 15, there were books written, Europeans in the 1500s establishing and talking about the Congo. Established and not had been isolated, but a well-known kingdom itself. And Europeans such as Stanley were discovering things that actually describe centuries prior to Lopez, and recorded by Felipe.
Pigafetta. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Kind of like the Columbus thing. Just things are already written prior to Columbus coming, but the fact that it was considered a discovery.
Absolutely. That's a great point, King. That's a great point. On page 135, on the second paragraph, and he speaks of he gives reference to the Kingdom of Congo was capable of putting 400,000 well-disciplined men in the field. And so that when it comes to the military, I'm always fascinated by that because again, back then there wasn't that many people, and so to have an army that size is absolutely massive. Absolutely,
a pretty big kingdom.
And so I did a little bit of research into that. So then they were saying that that's not true. That it was more or less like maybe 50 to maybe 100,000. And so I did a point of reference versus, where we are. So in reference to back then in antiquity. So we have 333 million people in the United States right now. And so our military, what popped up, our total personnel is 1.5 million. 1.5 million out of 333 million. So back then, and see, this is a 1578 to have an army of 400,000. That means, just going off what the numbers I read off the U.S., that would be half of that. They would have to have over 150 million people in the Congo. I don't think that was the case. Not saying that they couldn't have an army that size, but just wanted to bring a little context to that.
No, they could definitely have a military that size.
Yeah.
I mean, more people. It was just more of the population to be part of the military.
Yeah. I just like to look at the numbers to see to make a point of reference to see.
But that shows that they were sufficient and that they had wealth. You can't have 4,000 warriors, 400,000 people in an army without having wealth and riches and be able to feed them.
Yes.
And equip them with armor and clothing and weapons.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into that.
Shoot, yeah. There's no doubt.
So they were definitely well established before the Portuguese got there.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Diplomacy, politics. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the narrative now that it being, uninhabitable and lack of knowledge.
Savages.
Knowledge that was just yes.
Well, it says that they had on page 135 that the Congo in circumference was 1,685 miles.
Huge.
That's a big territory.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
that
it
is
is
huge. And also on 135, on the third paragraph, makes the first reference, for far as I could tell, the first Christian king of the Congo, King Dam Joao. So I thought that was a point of reference, not a point of reference, but to be highlighted as well too, the first Christian king. And we will see, as we already have, the role in Christianity going forward, into this book, and how it plays a role in those kings.
He was converted, right?
Yes.
He was converted
Yes.
into Christianity.
Yes.
Yeah. So the first Congo.
And there was a lot of
converted.
resistance with that.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was. It was.
It was.
That's what caused most of the problems for the Congo was the
That's
Christians
right.
coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to page 136. 136, Mr. Lopez's description, he goes very in depth. What I got out of it from 136, the Congo life and the culture of how they lived and what they ate. Again, his documentation from so long ago he's very detailed, very, very detailed.
I mean, they had lots of products they made, and I thought this was interesting. The author gives special attention to the palm tree. From one type of the palm was extracted oil, wine, vinegar, fruit, and bread. But they also used the palm for clothing, for doormats. I mean, for pretty much everything. It was a huge central part of their life. And I thought that interesting was the oil part. It talks about how they got oil from the pulp and it was freshly squeezed. And palm oil today is not done that way. Palm oil today is extracted through heat, and it destroys the nutrition. But this goes back to like when you think about what oil we should be eating. We should probably be eating the ones that doesn't take heat and processing.
This is true.
Like these guys did.
This is true. And if I'm not,
I didn't realize how crazy the palm tree was, how much they used it for.
Yeah, I was just going to say
many things.
That goes way back to Egyptian times as well, right? The palm.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was ages before this. I mean, many, many moons way back before this time. So you're right, Chris. That has played an important part for many, 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 many centuries.
And you would think that's what God intended, to use the very thing that was given to us on this great.
Right.
Yes.
This only makes sense, and to keep the process very limited.
That's right.
As natural as possible. So, even when you think about the fruits and vegetables in modern times, right now, fruits not having seeds, so being able to duplicate or grow a particular product. Some speculation of we can easily be controlled due to that because we want no longer be able to have our own garbage.
That's right. That's right.
You're right, man.
That's dang right. At the bottom there, page 136, not again, but it makes reference to Christianity was introduced in the Congo before 1491. So again, Christianity, not again, but we're getting to see how Christianity is trying to, or being forced, if you will, to make its way onto the continent of Africa. Let's see, the Mani Sango was the first nobleman to embrace Christian faith. And it was in 1491 that he caused a church to be built in his province and was himself baptized. Emmanuel, the king of Congo, embraced Christianity soon afterward and took the name of Don Jao. So on page 137. 137. Which kings get on 137?
Oh, 137. The main point in this page is really talking about how when Christianity finally got its roots started in Congo, it really got in with started controlling the hierarchy of the rulers. It became part of you had to be a king, you had to be a Christian.
I thought too, something of significance as well in the second paragraph is where Duan Dam Pedro's reign that the first bishop for the Congo was appointed by Rome. So you start to see the popes start to get involved the first time into that as well, which is a big deal. A huge big deal.
What do they call it? A coup? Is that a coup?
A coup?
Yeah.
Coup?
A coup? Yes. Yeah, they were trying to infiltrate their
right.
the royalty, and that's what they did.
Mm-hmm. And you were mentioning the pushback that was because they some were against it, and so let's see down there the second to last paragraph. The presence of the Portuguese bishop seems to have gotten much rise to much dissatisfaction among the people, and some Portuguese priests who appeared to side with the people against the bishop were shipped back to Portugal as prisoners, and others were sent as prisoners to the island of St. Thomas. So if you opposed, as you had just mentioned, you were out of there. I mean, you were
Yes.
out of there.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They were causing unrest within their community.
The prince was educated in the kingdom was in Europe. The prince of the kingdom of Congo was educated in Europe and studied theology in Rome. I think that's something right there too. When we put our kids in certain educational systems, you basically rebranded. You no longer remember or want to remember what you lived by at one time, but now you have this new journey that you stand for, or new propaganda that you stand for now.
Well,
they understood that you could reprogram.
Right. And look how many scholastic programs are Christian based.
Yes, just about all of them.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
We're looking into homeschooling for my daughter, and so being, I don't know if the word is careful, but certainly being aware of what is. We don't want it to be Christian based. I don't want it to be that. But how many of those programs are like that. It's
yes, they are.
It's quite a few. It's quite a few.
Yes.
You're right, man.
Yeah. That's one reason why we moved to Missouri, because in Texas you have to follow a certain curriculum that they offer.
Really, when you homeschool in Texas, you still have to follow a certain curriculum?
Sure.
Well, let's see. So they want you to have four main points that they want you at least to cover, and so the curriculum, it could be, but it's 4 things that they want you to be included into that. But outside of that, you're pretty much on your own as far as the direction you want to teach your kid.
Gotcha.
So in the 137 there, it speaks about the death of Dom Diego and how there were only 3 men in the royal blood that could run the country, and going on to page 138 at the top there. And so it speaks on of how, certain people favored this person and certain people favored these people. Of course, the Congo people had their person that they wanted to have, and then the Portuguese wanted their person that they wanted to have. And so they ended up assassinating all 3 people.
Yeah.
That's what the Christians were planning, though.
Yes.
They were causing that. They wanted to cause that unrest to get people to turn on each other, and they did.
Yes, they did. And it goes on to go ahead, King.
This would be the great divide. This is a great divide right
here. This is one of the most important political lessons in this chapter for me, is that when a nation accepts help from a stranger from foreign power, the help may solve the immediate problem, but create a deeper dependency in the future. Portugal helped drive out the Jagas, but then immediately they looked for gold, silver, and mines.
Yeah,
they sure did.
And so it wasn't. They weren't, to add on to what you're saying. It's like the individuals that were coming to help always had an interior motive to get to the goal. It wasn't, we'll help you, but we want that goal. We want your resources. Always, what we come across is always at that angle that's applied to it. Now, the people don't know that.
It's a sense of survival, though. It's a sense of survival. You know what I mean? You think about it's a sense of survival. As wrong as we may see it,
That's right.
In a sense.
I mean, the Portuguese church, they were sending all those missions down to the Congo. And also, it wasn't just the Congo. East Africa, West Africa, the Gold Coast. But what's all in common with all these is that they were using their religion to justify the reason to go there, right?
Sure.
So they were using our job is to spread Christianity, which is part of their religion, and they're using that to infiltrate other areas to take their wealth. And so they keep on growing their status and control.
Yes.
Well, you're dead on. And as you mentioned, the Jagas. So going on down to 138, the Jagas, they were not a very nice people. Since the two sides killed the successors that was supposed to be there, so that had an opportunity for the Jagas to take their shot at the Congo. And so on that, let's see, the third paragraph there in the middle, the Jagas' occupation of the Congo caused much distress and loss of life, and fathers were compelled to sell their sons and brothers their brothers in order to obtain food. Many died of hunger, others were carried away by the Portuguese merchants as slaves. It was in the midst of this universal distress that the king of the Congo sent an ambassador to Dom Sebastian, king of Portugal, to seek Later's assistance. Dom Sebastian immediately sent food and help through the Captain Francisco de Gova. And so, to what you were just talking about, and it gets into how, Dom Sebastian, yeah, he sent help, but he also had an interior motive, to do that. He goes on to, at the bottom there, that page, Francisco Barbuto, a Portuguese friend and confessor to the king of Congo, however, advised the king not to permit the mines to be searched for. So that was the angle that Dom Sebastian had. You will send you help, but he also tried to send secretly the ambassadors to go search for the mines to give him an angle too. And as he told him, assuring him that once they were discovered, he would cease to be the ruler of an independent kingdom. But it's good he had a buddy there for him.
Yeah. They got screwed, man.
They did. And that is highlighted on page 139. 139.
Like my new favorite movie, y'all have talked about it before, called SWAT. But it's about, it's just called a puku, but it's like a little squirrel who's curious, but he's a friendly squirrel, so he's always teaching foreigners how to do certain things. So we taught this bird to open up a particular pod, which popped out seeds. Which once you show this particular bird how to do so, of course the whole flock came and took over the puku's land and actually starved out the puku almost. I mean, these little cartoons is fascinating just watching the cartoons with your kids, but when you start reading things, you've seen the correlation. You see how the real life is involved into these cartoons as well. So, but I encourage you guys to watch that. It's a really good one. It's a really good one.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah. What is that called?
SWAT.
Swap.
Matter of fact, SWAT. S-A SWAT. The guy that plays Creed, Jordan. No, Michael B. Jordan. Michael B. Jordan, the guy that plays Creed in the Rocky movies. He's a voice. He's a voice for one of the animals or the Poku on the show. So it's interesting.
Cool.
Right on.
Cool.
It's one of my favorite movies, man, Rocky.
Bruh, I like the Creeds now. I bought all the Creeds 1, 2, and 3. But
yeah,
I'm
the Creeds are
always
good.
a Rocky fan. Yeah, I'm always a Rocky because that's the foundation.
That is, man.
That's right. Okay, Kings on 139. What I took out of that is Mr. Lopez again, his description of the Congo. I mean, he gets into very good detail of how they use the palm trees, if you will, as their way of life, and the oils and the cloth and the things that they made.
Lots of velvet. Velvet, satin, taffeta, damask.
Yep. And then how
trial marriages.
Yeah, I was just
going
to say marriages. That. Yes.
Yeah, then you actually live with your mate before you got married, but now we got to get married before you live with your mate.
Get married.
I thought that was different.
Yeah.
Well, they changed everything. They brought in monogamy, and that wasn't there previously.
No.
Before Christianity came.
Yeah. And I've always thought Christianity changed that. Christianity really came in and really changed the preference of the sexual content of our sexual nature of relationships, I believe. Even during like I said, different times we talked about the Salem witch trials, or if women were more promiscuous than normal, they were considered demonized, or they were demonized. So Christianity, man, it's done its deed on world.
The world.
Sure.
As we talked about the synodical councils, if you will, how each time they would decide on which direction Christianity would go. If you were at first in the beginning, you could speak what you wanted to. Not the Nicene Creed, that all changed. It became more about to get control of the minds and your thought process. So you couldn't just say what you wanted to. It had to be whatever they dictated. And from then on out, it's you guys are right, how it has influenced everything on a global level.
It did. I mean, when it came into the Congo there in that kingdom, it really messed up their royal bloodline. When they instilled monogamy, that created to where they'd have less heirs.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
And so they were trying to make it to where they would basically kill off all the heirs and there wouldn't be any left.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
And they did do that.
Yes, they did.
They did.
They did kill off all the heirs, and then they installed the stepson, and he was a Christian. And the next thing you know, after that, every royal king in the Congo was Christian.
Well, and I read, this from another book. For the African people, their mindset was they weren't their way. They view the foreigners, if you will, as with kindness and friendliness.
They welcomed them.
Yeah, that was just their nature. Period. So of course, they couldn't see on the other side of that wolf's clothing, if you will, that sheep's clothing, there was a wolf on the other side of that thing, coming to take everything that they had. So, and then militarily, they didn't have the firepower to be able to deal with that. Now, had they had been, it might be a different story. But now here they were starting, after a while, they were starting to get it like, you know what? Because word started to spread like, these guys aren't who they said to be. However, again, militarily, they didn't have a shot, truly. They didn't have a shot.
It was too late.
Yeah, it was too late by then.
It was almost too late.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think conquest was on their minds, like on the Christians.
Yeah.
And so they weren't prepared for conquest.
That's right.
And then Africa had other foreigners that came by and wanted to do business.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't the first and foreigner that came to them. They had other foreigners that wanted to do business and trade with them. That's so it only made sense to be open hearted and allow people to come in because it could have been beneficial to them.
That's right. That's right.
They just didn't know how the Christians were going to treat them.
That's right.
True.
So moving on to page 140. 140. Now,
one thing I want when the king came, when the Portuguese did send a bunch of people down to, for looking for gold mines, it talks about, we didn't mention that the king sent them to the wrong mines.
No, yes, he did. Yes, he did.
He understood. He did understood what they were wanting.
That's right.
And so they were trying to push them away from the actual mines.
That's right. That's right. That's a great point. That's exactly right. On page 140, I took down there that last paragraph when he gives a description of the two Dutch ambassadors who came through the gallery to the king of the Congos, and how he lives is magnificent. Magnificent. I'm going to read that last paragraph right there, just to give everybody an example.
Yes.
His Majesty sat in a small chapel hung with rush mats, from the top of which hung a branch of wax candles. He was dressed in cloth of gold coat and drawers, and had about his neck 3 gold chains. His right thumb was adorned with a very large granite or ruby ring, and on his left hand with two great emeralds. On the left sleeve of his coat a gold cross was fastened, richly enclosed in a piece of well-polished crystal. He wore on his head a fine white cap, and on his legs a pair of russet boots. At his right stood an officer, who sometimes greatly fanned the air with a handkerchief, and at his left side another holding a tin bow and a tin scepter. Tin scepter covered with fine cloth. His seat was a red velvet Spanish chair, over which, upon a border, was embroidered in letters Dom Alvarez, Rex Congo. Right before him lay spread a great Turkey carpet, and over his head hung a canopy of white satin wrought with gold and trimmed with deep fringe. Lastly, a little on his right hand kneeled Dom Bernardo de Manzos, his interpreter and secretary. So this gives you a little bit of insight on how the elegance on how these kings lived back then. You know?
And you don't have that elegance without a great civilization.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, you got to have people working together.
Yeah.
Even Arthur compared the Congo symbolism noble to the Europeans.
Yes.
The order of the in England, and still is to this day, is the most prestigious honors and a person could receive.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives an idea that the Congo had noble ranks, they had court protocols, they had symbols of status, they had symbols of reward and recognition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, our whole point of the podcast, as far as the African conquest, is to establish the fact that these kingdoms were prominent. That they weren't isolated and unknown and poor and savages and restricted. These people carried on a legacy that still lives to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And they were civilized.
Very civilized. Very civilized.
You know, they kind of like, you know, we're getting to the Congo and looking at all the kingdoms we've studied up to now. I see a common thing that's going on with these creed religions. Was when they started. Christianity, for me, being one of the most dangerous ones in this time frame, but also Muslim, is that whenever they start to move or expand their religion, they take over that territory and they ruin its culture.
Mm-hmm.
They completely just ruin it. Mm-hmm. Now, before Christianity started, you look at the kingdoms that were conquest kingdoms like Rome. They may have took over an area, right? But they didn't take away the area's culture. Mm-hmm. They still allowed the area to practice and have their own traditions and their own religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they almost embraced it. They almost embraced it, I would say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's something important to point out.
Sure. Right. I do agree.
That's right. Moving on to page 141. 141. What I took out of that is it gives an account of the prince, the count of the prince of the Congo refused to acknowledge the sovereignty of the king of the Congo. So that escalated into battles, several battles. The king of the Congo tried to take it by force, if you will. He wanted that respect, but the prince was not having any of that. So the king invited the Jagas to join him, and who else? He invited somebody else to join in with him. However, to no avail. That did not work out for him.
The king was furious and mobilized a large force, including around 400 mixed-race troops under the Duke of Bamba, Mani Bamba, again, and the king's forces were defeated. The kings then planned a full attack on the Congo, but wanted to make sure that the Dutch did not interfere, and he sent gifts to Count Johan and Grave Maurice, the Dutch governor in Brazil. And then Maurice instructed the Dutch in Congo, Angola, and nearby areas not to interfere with the conflict. And Dom Emeralds II also sent a similar request to the Prince of Orange. How do you say that?
And then he went on to, this is also tied into 142 as well, that same story. So he invited the Jagas and the Portuguese to join into the fight in the promise of the gold mines, if you will. However, it still didn't matter. They were all routed.
But when they found when they came over to them, the Portuguese found those gold mines. They didn't realize how much work it was to get the gold.
Yes. I was going,
and they didn't want to do the work either.
I was going to get into you are dead on. You know, it's like, so.
Am I a little head?
No. But that was great because I was going to get into it because it shows, you know, the process of how long it took to get that gold out of there. So when we read already that the magnificence of the jewels and the gold, like that took centuries to get out of the ground. They weren't pulling out huge nuggets and then melting it down to separate. That took a long time. So when they got there, what they're seeing is the byproduct of centuries of hard work of getting that out of the ground. And so they think like, oh, well, this is just in abundance. This stuff is everywhere. Not realizing that, it
was hard work.
Yeah.
It took skill too. Yes. They had skills they had. Portuguese wasn't interested in that. They just thought it was there and easy to take.
That's right.
And even in other books, they even talk about how people were built. So that's why it only
Mm-hmm.
makes sense to enslave them because they built and how they did things.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It wasn't about convenience, about building machines. They necessarily did things by hand as much as they could.
That's
Or
right.
use of them.
That's right.
Time, you know?
That's right. So that on page 142 onto 143, I took out of that, European treachery and destruction. So on page 143 there, those last two paragraphs, gives insight into how they, to what we were just speaking on, rooting out the the people that were there and importing their own people, killing off the dukes and the assassinations of everybody and the robbery and the church, the violence. So with the Christian priests, here, let me read. Let's see here. I'm gonna start on that second paragraph of 143. From the writings of Jerome Morola of Sorrento, a Capuchin missionary in the Congo, and from Morello's own arrogant behavior in the Congo, we can clearly see that by the end of the 17th century, European priests were attempting to command Congolese counts and dukes, executing or enslaving Congolese ancestral priests and indigenous doctors, and were even pretending to have the power to control the elements and to confound the Congolese Christians, who had become tools and pawns in the hands of unscrupulous European priests, soldiers, and merchants alike. Soon, mere parish priests from Europe could remove Congolese kings from their thrones and could detect and can direct the thoughts and actions of their flock. Executions, treachery, robbery, and violence became the order of the day, with the Christian priests assisting in the violence by having their rival indigenous African priests and doctors executed. So this gives you a little bit of insight on how Christianity was being forced in a very devastating way.
Yeah, man. They kind of like presented it as like something good and spiritual, and then as soon as they got their fingertips in, they did a 180 and started using that as for control, destruction, political manipulation.
Yes.
And
You
just
got to give them
destroying.
credit on page 142. Now they did slain 6 of them. They did slain
Yes,
6 Portuguese now.
yes, yes.
They
You
did.
know, I mean, it wasn't in a whole lot, but I mean, it still showed that many certain narratives believe focus on Europeans being conquered others. But this passage basically gives an idea of how the Portuguese were defeated in a sense by
Mm-hmm.
force.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
he definitely in page 142 that says, "Never did whites yet submit to these slaves to be blacks, to these slaves to blacks. Neither will we." But the words had hardly left their mouth when their
Yes.
heads tumbled to their ground.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
just
Yes. All right, to all those who are just joining us for Brothers and Many Words, Sunday Book Club. Sunday Book Club. We're discussing chapters 14 through 16 in the book African Glory by the author J.C. DeGraff Johnson. J.C. DeGraff Johnson. Okay, gentlemen. Moving on to chapter 15, the Portuguese in Central and East Africa on page 144. 144. And right off the bat, he goes in again to Duarte Lopez, and that second paragraph gives an account of all of the journeys and all of the writers of that time frame from 1445 to 1573, the journeys that they had and how well documented they had those two, give us an account of what life was back then in that area.
Yeah, the Portuguese definitely got around.
They did.
They were going everywhere looking for that gold.
They were. They were hungry for it. Hungry for it.
I mean, that's the biggest thing that I keep on seeing here with the Portuguese is they keep on using religion, and what they were focused on was wealth, and they were just using religion to obtain it.
Mm-hmm. They did a great job of it. Like you said, just to get their fingers in it, and after that, it was absolute destruction if you did not bend to their will. What do we got on 145, Kings? What do we got on 145? Oh, this is what we're talking about, the gold mining. The gold mine.
Yeah, this page destroys the lazy myth. The author's using Portuguese evidence to show that Africans were already mining gold way before the Europeans controlled the trade. Portuguese did not teach Africa how to find value in the earth. Africa already had it.
That's right.
They were already doing that way before.
Yes. Yes. And so that little excerpt there down the middle of page 145, and the whole kingdom of Belanga, gold is extracted, and in this way they dig out the earth and make a kind of tunnel through which they go under the earth a long stone's throw and keep on taking out from the veins with ground mixed with gold. And when collected, they put it in a pot. They take it out and put it to cool. When cold, the earth remains, and the gold is all fine gold. This description is interesting in view of the modern assertion that the African never knew the art of mining, and that but for the presence of Europeans, the extracting of the mineral wealth of the great continent could not have been undertaken. And as we Tip just stated, that is incorrect.
Sir.
Proven by Mansa Musa again, and he had so much gold.
Well, now they're stating that Elon Musk is the first trillionaire.
Yes, I've seen that.
Which Mansa Musa was originally first trillionaire.
Yes.
In the world, but it wasn't equated at that point in time.
Right.
Being a trillionaire, but if there's any comparison to money now as to then, they say that he was
Yes.
Yeah, but the wealth is completely different from Mansa Musa's wealth and Elon Musk. Mansa Musa's wealth was real. It was tangible, right? It wasn't just made up in the air. While Elon Musk, I mean, if we have if all the computers go down, he loses his money. You know what I mean?
Great point.
Totally
and the power that he has with that money. I'm not saying Elon Musk is a bad guy. All I'm saying is I'm just making an observation. Is that all of his power is in the systems that are in place today, right? Yeah. So if those systems fall, then his power goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's how American society is built on. It's built on paper power.
Yes,
built
paper
on
power.
Paper power. What you gonna put on paper to make it look good to present? That's exactly what it comes to.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Very good point.
Definitely.
So the end of 45 on into 146, what I got out of that, it was the battle between the Moors and the Portuguese, one trying to gain influence over the other. The Moors, Islam, the Portuguese, and Christianity. And there were, I won't say battles, but they were definitely, there was a battle for the struggle for supremacy over which religion was going to rule what.
And the Moors had already extracted most of the wealth before the Portuguese even arrived there.
This is true as well. What about on page 147?
147.
147. The battle between the Moors and Christianity. The people rejecting Christianity in retaliation by the Portuguese. That's what I took out of that page.
Portuguese held to them, which that's true.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about how Portuguese are.
Mm-hmm.
And they were using. I mean, the gold was their objective. That was the only thing they were really looking for.
Greed. Survival.
So Christianity. Go ahead.
Go ahead, King. Do anything for it.
Yeah. So just to read go ahead, King.
Go ahead. I was going to say page 147 kind of gives us the formula in plain sight. They send missionaries, they gain access to the courts, then they convert the ruler, then they trigger political fear, then they use missionaries' death as justification, then launch a military campaign to seize the gold. Mm-hmm. And that's how they use their evangelicism to spread their empire.
Mm-hmm.
This is relevant today.
Yep.
Today's societies and countries. Yes.
So I'm gonna read a couple of sentences out of that major paragraph there in 147. The baptism turned out to be a political blunder, for the Moors were soon able to convince the emperor's subjects through Christianity, the Portuguese hoped to dominate the whole country. Father Dom Congalo de Silveira was assassinated, and the Portuguese, in an effort to avenge his death, organized great punitive expedition. It was no longer a punitive expedition, but the plan to subdue the entire continent and to seize the gold abounded there. So, going to page 148. See, it speaks on Vasco Fernandez Homan was the next one for the second expedition, if you will, to conquer the Monomotapia kingdom. And
which is Zimbabwe, which is Zimbabwe today.
Which is Zimbabwe today.
Yes.
So on 148, let's see here. In that first paragraph, his men finding themselves in a country where report had it that everything was gold, had expected to find it in the streets and woods and come away laden with it. They were disappointed when they saw the difficulty with which the people extracted the gold from the bowels of the earth and the risks which mining entailed. Yeah, they were saddened.
They were. They sure were.
And so because of that, he sent back to the King of Portugal that was not going to be, them going into that was not going to be possible to get that gold. And so that second paragraph right after that, again, Christianity, how the Portuguese had at least conquered the empire of Monomotapa, but this time they were not in a hurry to convert the emperor to Christianity, at least not until they had converted 20,000 of his subjects. And we keep saying to use the people.
He says we need to start sending this book to every person, put it in their mailbox. We just need to send it. Just send this book to every person in America.
Yes.
I mean, but when you look at it, Christianity is still doing the same exact thing today.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
They're just using new tools today.
Yes.
I mean, but back then that was what they did is they invaded, they extracted wealth from the people, and they used Christianity to do it. And today, like, think of a church, they just opened up new building. They're using ads and to get, their charisma and being charismatic to get people into the building. And Jesus loves you. Let's spread Christ. Everything's good. All good feelings. And then I need money.
Yeah.
And then they have a whole entire, sermon that talks about how you need to give to make people feel bad into the want to give. And then they play music, and that's what they do today. They use, just like, they show up in sheep's clothing and they give me money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, you're right. You hit that right on the nail.
And now we have Christian music. We have all these new things that Christians have developed, light shows, fog machines to get people's attention to stay. Because if they don't have that, you ain't going to stay. You're not going to sit there and watch them.
This is true. Now, rest of page 148 and 149, you spoke on the Casperine, the reigning relative of the Monomotapia kingdom, who his son was given to the Dominican friars, who was supposed to be the next ruler of that empire. But instead of doing that, they replaced him they wanted their own person, which was Muvara in his place. So they took that son and shipped him to the Dominican friars, and so he ended up becoming a great preacher for them. He was supposed to have been the next ruler, but he never got that shot. They shipped him off into to somewhere else. And so on that page 149, if you will, in 1670, the general of the order sent him the diploma of, this speaking of Caspersine's son, who's supposed to be the next ruler of Monomotapia, master of theology, equivalent to the doctrine of divinity. And this man, born a barbarian, heir to the most important chieftainship in South Africa, died as a vicar in the convent of Santa Barbara in Gaio. Fiction surely has no stranger story than this. So again, it shows the manipulation, if you will, of how they impose their will to get what they want, but how Christianity was used in that way.
Yes. Yeah, the Portuguese wanted the wealth without accepting African control over the wealth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's devastating to read these things to me. So on page 150,
It is. I have to stop sometimes and just take a breath because the manipulation is real, and
yes,
if you don't read it, it constantly just keeps happening. If you don't
yes,
understand it,
yes.
And a lot of people just don't want to accept the truth
That is
they
what.
when it
don't,
comes
bro.
when it
They
comes to
don't.
this religion, Christianity. I know we've brought it up, and I keep on bringing it up, but I mean that's as we move on to the next chapter when we get into the slave trade. That was
Mm-hmm.
because of Christianity too. I mean, it's
Yes, it
just a
was.
huge rule
Yes,
right
Yes,
now
it was.
in
yes,
these three chapters.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
But I
yes.
mean, if you go where you go into some of these neighborhoods, into the hoods, and there are mega churches, and they're
Mm-hmm.
full of black people who don't even understand that this is the same religion that took you off your throne.
Mm-hmm.
You were reading my mind. I was really
Took you off your throne. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
same religion that
Yes.
started all this
Goodness.
is they feel like that's their home religion now, if you know what I
Yes,
mean.
it is. Oh yeah, they do.
Just like a
Yes,
lot
they
of
do.
Spanish guys, I have my sister's Mexican and she is married to a guy that came from Mexico, and his family are deep into the Catholic Church, and that is because of the Portuguese going down there and infiltrating there
Mm-hmm.
and doing the
Yes.
same thing, looking for gold because they had a lot of gold down there
Yes.
too.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Kings. For those who are just joining us on Brothers of Many Words Sunday Book Club, we are moving into chapter 16. My goodness, chapter 16. Chapter 16, Slavery and the Negro. Okay.
Chapter 16.
Page 151.
Here we go.
Here we go. Look, I wanted to read the whole chapter. I ain't even gonna lie to you, because the insight and just to give people an understanding.
It was disgusting.
Just to give you an understanding. I think when we get further down, here's some pages that I think we should read just to give people an insight of what took place on those voyages, and just to you can understand the mindset as well too of these people that were doing these things. Is it's it's shocking. So on page 151, this gives what I took out of it: Africa's impact on the world. Page 151, everything that they did. And so I would just read a little bit. You Kings, you join in as well. So that on the last paragraph right there. I mean, there are many things, but the Ethiopian at Thebes named the stars of the heavens with names we still use based on some happenings in their country. Behold the wrecks of her metropolis of Thebes, with her 100 palaces, the parent of cities and monument of the caprice of destiny. There are people now forgotten, discovered, while others were yet barbarians, the elements of the arts and sciences. A race of men now rejected from society for their sable skin, frizzled hair, founded on the study of the laws of nature, though civil and religious systems will still govern the unwise.
I think this gives a really good indication of why, even in the West to this day, even in the West today, why they state there never be a black Messiah, or they do not people of color, I would say, start to unify because they understand their true history and what they're able to do. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? I think this plays a huge role in just understanding that.
Mm-hmm.
When I was looking to Co and Pro and to the Black and White Panthers, man, there is a lot of things that went on to prevent black people from unifying and coming together. It was just as bad as burning books, if you would say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
You
think,
know,
man, there's something in Africa they're keeping from us on a global level. And you guys ever heard of Graham Hancock?
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And so Graham, he has a few books. He's a journalist. And I'm not going to get into beliefs or opinions, just saying what he's talking about. Recently, I'm listening. He's on a podcast, The Diary of a CEO. It's a pretty good show.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, he's going to talk about how with the new LiDAR technology and then going over the Amazon, the rainforest,
Mm-hmm.
and also now that they're kind of clearing some of it they're clearing the Amazon's been cleared for many years for livestock and farming.
Mm-hmm.
They're finding there was ancient civilizations in the Amazon, potentially 20,000 years ago.
Mhm. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
there's a lot
everybody
of
can.
archaeologists that go against him. And I think there's major history in Africa, and they want to keep everybody not focus on Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think there is a
Yeah.
conspiracy with that
Absolutely.
on a
Yeah,
global level.
Yeah, even Hitler sent his regime to Africa looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were, and even the symbol that he used, African.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where does our
Swastika.
alphabet come from?
Well, just getting ready to get into that.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
a good
Yes.
tie-in. That's a
Yeah.
good tie-in. I'm just getting
Yeah.
ready to read that, man. It's the art of writing was not unknown to the African. This fact is seldom recognized by Europeans and even by some Africans who have lost touch with their past history. Negroes actually invented absolutely original systems of writing. And he goes on the page of 151 into 152, you know, giving that little bit of excerpt there. And so I would just read that, man. Young Kings, feel free to read anything that you want. I think this chapter, like we could spend a whole segment on just this chapter. The fact is more noteworthy because if a white Semitic race taught us the art of writing, no alphabet of that Indo-European race to which we are so proud to belong has ever been discovered. An alphabet has been traced to the VI in Liberia and Sierra Leone, who have apparently used for more than a century, excuse me, a syllabic writing of their own invention. And lastly, to the Nubians of the Karasho and Mahaya district, who, according to the English author H.A. McMichael, make use of a specific alphabet more or less derived from an Oriental writing. And it goes on. I mean, that whole page gets really in depth. But you're right, Chris.
I mean, the alphabet came from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
The same language they use to spread their religions come from the place that they're taken from
Mm-hmm.
and controlling.
Mm-hmm.
Strategy. And there's a huge list that came.
Mm-hmm.
Huge
Mm-hmm.
list.
That's right. That's right. Let's see. I'm down there on page 1. Still on 152. Anybody else get anything else out of 152?
I did have something I'll just read real quick.
Go ahead, brother.
Out of the book. Right in the middle, it says the whites in North Africa achieved contact with the blacks for the sole purpose of plundering, sacking, and carrying off thousands into captivity, and of imposing dogmas by the force of arms, and meaning of which they did not even trouble to make clear. Later on, the penetration of other whites, despite the natural surf barrier along the coast, resulted anew in the abduction of thousands of slaves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, I mean, move on to number in the page, the next page, 153. And in the middle of that page, it refers to Christians as gangsters, calling them gangsters.
Original G's.
The original gangsters were Christians who were sacking, killing people, using their religion to control.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'm just going to step back on 152 there to where you were at that next paragraph on how they, as they devastated an area, they moved westward and then southward, spreading confusion, anarchy, and ruin wherever they went. They extended the gospel of doom past the Niger down to the Congo Basin, past Leongo and Angola, down south to the Cape of Good Hope, and by 1789 they had initiated Mozambique into their slave trading ideology. That next paragraph. They manufactured quarrels among tribesmen, and set them at each other's throats, taking care, of course, to supply them with modern weapons. The propagandists and the religious hypocrites of the time claimed that, however cruel was the traffic of human flesh, the African slave of the West Indies and in America were happier than in their own country. To quote Professor Torday, this too is an age of propaganda. We excel our ancestors only in system and organization. They lied as fluently and as brazenly. Central Africa was a territory of peace and happy civilization. And so that also that, you know, they also divided up the land into where, so these tribes people, if you will, they got along with one another. They had the wars and whatnot, but when they went in and chopped up the country, um, so they would section it off to where, you know, to create that confusion where, how do I want to say it? You understand what I'm saying? So they were
I do.
Yeah.
they were pitting people against different tribes
They were
or
giving
different
certain
tribes.
tribes an
Okay,
X
you were here
amount of
next.
land. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes,
And then
yes,
they'd be mad
yes.
because
Calling
you got this
confusion.
land. It was. Yeah, it was. Which
Yeah.
again is still part of the strategy to this day. I mean, look at what we're dealing with
Yes.
to this day. Even I even
Yes.
mentioned too about the Bloods and Crips back in the 70s, how they had came to a truce, and then society came out, the system, government, how you want to what you want to call it, came out and brought more confusion, which ramped up the Bloods and the Crips start fighting again. Like it's unreal. And then they have this thought about black on black crime, which was created.
That's right.
Created.
Obviously, it was
That's right.
created.
Yes. It's the same thing.
That's right.
Just in a new light in today's world. I hope
Yeah.
people can make that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had like when I was reading this last night in my head, a way to like you guys seen a movie, like think of one of those movies where a bad guy comes in and say there's this little girl and she has this family. Bad guy comes in, wipes out the whole village, kills her entire family, and then the bad guy takes this girl as his own daughter, right? Like this 2-3-year-old girl, then raises her, right? So she views him as her protector, the guy that feeds her and clothes her and takes care of her and provides her shelter. That's kind of what the Christians are doing here. They come in, they take over everything, and then they turn around and try to just preach their nice Jesus message to them. And then they people fall under that control, and then generations pass, and they're kind of locked in, and then we move into now we're in the slavery time, right?
Yeah.
And then through the generations, they're confused on who they are, where they come from, what happened to them, and they think that the Christians are the ones taking over. Now we see today how most of Africans follow Christianity.
Yep.
And so Rebel Moon.
Sorry if that was long-winded.
That's a good movie.
Rebel Moon. That's a movie. I love that movie. It's Rebel Moon. It's what Chris is talking about. Huge empire. They come over and dominate a particular planet or country, if you want to say. They take this particular girl, raise her to be his right-hand man. And she ends up killing the king and the queen and the princess. And then he basically voids her, throws her to the wayside. But then at the end of the movie, she conquers him. But it's just a whole part of the training and the manipulation.
I actually got that from Mortal Kombat 2 last night, the movie I watched last night.
Okay.
When Shao Kahn kills one of the beats the world and he takes the daughter as his own. That's same thing.
Same thing.
It's a new movie. It just got released.
They're telling us. I mean, they're sitting there telling us over and over again.
But
if you don't know your history, you're just looking at it as a movie and entertainment.
That's right. That's right.
No, there's messages in movies, man.
Absolutely.
We got 8 comments, y'all.
On page on 153. So I spoke on that mindset on that first paragraph. Travelers traveled hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles from one side of the vast continent to the other without molestation. For the stranger was always an honored guest to the African. So that was their mindset. So right after that, the tribal wars from which the European pirates claimed to deliver the people were sham fights. It was a great battle when half a dozen men perished on a battlefield. And so to go on to the next paragraph, tribal life was broken up or undermined, and millions of detribalized or decentralized Africans were let loose upon each other. So as you just spoke on, the gangs and whatnot turn, pit one against the other, and so you destroy your own selves. But however, Christianity is the save all be all, if you will.
Yes, the tribes at the very end of that what you were just reading, a little farther down. So before had given rise to cannibalism was going on at that time because conditions got so bad, people were resorting to cannibalism. It says, in the heart of the Holy Land, and just in our day, the condition of Belsun and Dachu gave rise to cannibalism at the zenith of European civilization. Tribes had to supply slaves. Tribes had to supply slaves or be sold as slaves themselves. For this, indeed, was the age of the gangster. Wow.
Violence, brutality, and ferocity became the necessities of survival. For generosity and good neighborliness had lost their meaning.
They had that there when we talk about concept, when they use that in black culture or how we sold each other out. You know what I mean? Now you understand it wasn't just a selling you out. You or your whole family would be killed unless you went out to provide slaves for for Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about why were they wanting slaves? You know, I know the book doesn't talk about this, but why do you think they wanted slaves?
For the
why do you think that the Europeans, the Portuguese, and the Americans, why did they want slaves? What was the reason for getting slaves?
I would say just that's a good question. Why would they want the slaves?
When you think about it, I have an opinion I can share, but
Okay.
I was going to ask you guys.
Well, I think
what's your opinion?
For me, when I think about it, like I think of Christians and they built the civilization, and I think of today, you know, think of the 50s, everything was perfect, your nice little neighborhoods, you know, everyone's pretty and doing their own thing and everything's convenient. You can go to the grocery store and get your food, right? With Christianity came abundance, and with all that wealth came laziness, and they no longer wanted to work for their own life. And so they used their religion to capture people to do their own work for them, you know. And so fast forward to today, we are all slaves now to the you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You see where I'm going with that?
Mm-hmm.
I do. You know, and I have a book that is written from the British talking about the European people, which is almost exactly the opposite. So what they call black people to this day, or during slavery times, is what they call the Europeans. The British call them Europeans. You know what I mean? So it's a very interesting concept. But Chris, I definitely understand what you're saying for sure. For sure.
We lost community.
Yeah.
That was the thing, is that the community is gone. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we have abundance now, but it's not the same like before. We don't have we can go to the grocery store and buy something because a huge company owns all this land and monocropped all this area, right? And they're taking all the wealth from it, and we're barely surviving. But if we bring all those practices and put it back in the community, and then you live off the land that you're on as a community, we would be actually much better.
Mm-hmm.
But see, that gives power back to the localities instead of, you know, just the elites up top. Yeah. That makes it to where nobody's an elite.
Yeah. It's getting to a point now where, man, I'm looking up water rights. Like they're stating in the next 10 and 15 years, our water, we might be paying, like we pay for water now, but literally paying for buckets of water due to these data centers coming in and all these building these wells and things like that. It's to a point where it's not even just Bill Gates buying land for crops. He's buying them for water rights, because that's going to be scary here in the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I don't want that data center. That's right by my house. And I don't pay for water because I have a well. I just have to pay the electricity to pump the water from the well, right?
Right.
But, you know, 2 miles down the road that data center gets built, that's going to pull from my underwater river. You know, my well might run dry.
Yes.
And then I may have to get on the public system.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Erin Brockovich, my wife looked her up last night. She has a website and she shows where these data centers are located in the United States. It is unreal how many data centers have been built. I'll send you guys the website.
And they're putting them in places don't have water.
yeah, they are. But it's unreal. I thought it was just a few here and there.
No, it's everywhere.
Oh my gosh. When you showed that map, it almost looked red everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, why can't they build these things in outer space?
Because we've never been out of space.
All right.
Story, Chris. Yeah. We'll talk about that one afterthoughts or something.
Yeah. All right, Kings. All right. Great conversation. Moving on to page 154. 154 goes into detail. The treatment of the individuals that were held captives. Wait a minute. We're on page 154. Yes. So it goes into it is a little wonder then that slaves died not only from physical ill treatment, but also from grief, rage, and despair. Some undertook hunger strikes, some undid their chains and hurled themselves on the crew in futile attempts at insurrection. In order to combat the grief and melancholy among the slaves, it became the custom to have them on deck once a day and force them to dance. But even in these cases, many slaves took the opportunity to jump overboard,
Yep.
uttering cries of triumph as he cleared the vessel and disappeared below the surface. These are indeed limits to the degradation the human spirit will endure. Listen, it goes, man. The captive's anguish appears to have reached its peak during the Middle Passage. Now, this is an important part. As the crossing from West Africa to America and the West Indies was called, the term Middle Passage was used because it represented the second stage in the slavers' round trip out and home. The slaves were forced into crowded canoes and taken to ships where the use of whips and spears compelled them to climb, reeling and trembling as the swaying rope ladders. Once on board, the slaves were packed into decks within spaces which did not permit a tall man to stand upright. Men and women were put into separate compartments. The women were not chained together, but the men were chained in pairs, ankle to ankle, waist to waist. Those who those who were fortunate or unfortunate enough to escape during chain were packed in couples side by side like sardines, the feet of one against the head of the other. The captain of a slave ship, giving evidence before a commission, asked if the slaves were comfortable during the Middle Passage, replied, "They are about as comfortable as a man might be in his coffin." This must be noted that the Middle Passage generated, lasted 50 days. 50 days. 50 days. A surgeon on board of one of these slave ships described his experience in these words: "Some wet and blowing weather have occasioned the portholes to be shed and the grating to be covered. Fluxes and fevers among the Negroes resulted. While they were in this situation, my profession requiring it, I frequently went down among them, till at length their apartments became so extremely hot as to be only sufferable for a very short time. But the excessive heat was not the only thing that rendered their situation intolerable. The deck, that is the floor of their room, was so covered with the blood and mucus which had proceeded from them in consequence of the flux that it resembled a slaughterhouse. It is not in the power of the human imagination to picture a situation more dreadful and disgusting. Number of the slaves had fainted. They were carried on deck, where several of them died, and the rest were with difficulty restored. It nearly proved fatal to me also."
You know what? I'm gonna tell y'all this. I have a hard time believing this.
You
I
do?
do. I have a hard time believing the Atlantic slave trade. I do.
Mhm,
Because you got to think about at the time we had barber pirates. We had
mhm,
pirates that were taking ships, right? So how can you allow so many ships or up to 12 million slaves over a period of time go back and forth and never be interrupted by a barber pirate who was Arabian or who was from Morocco or who
mhm,
was a Moor?
mhm,
So, I hear this, right? But I believe our narrative is always given to us because we're not the writers of our history.
mhm,
So, when you study this, you read into this, but you never read the opposing side, right? You
mhm,
never read the opposite part of this. Like
mhm,
again, I never even understood about the Barber Pirates. I've never heard of it until I just came across it, and then I began to research it, and then but explain that though. Explain how you have pirates that are black and Arabian invading the Atlantic, and
mhm,
yet again, they were able to bring 12 million slaves to America.
mhm.
I'm confused by that. Unless somebody else got something that can explain that.
No, I mean, you
No, I
mentioned.
mean it
Go
was a
ahead.
50-day journey, and from what they're explaining is that these people were tucked into the very bottom,
Hmm.
extremely hot for 50 days. They couldn't move, and so they were pooping and pissing. And I
Yeah,
mean, you just imagine the nastiness. And I don't even know
yeah.
how a person could survive for 50
I
days
don't either. I mean, that
in
doesn't
those
really.
conditions, and
I
with how
that's
hot it was, with
true.
sweating. Are they getting water? Are they getting fed?
No,
Like,
you doubt it. What water do you have on the ship with that many people on the ship? How do you maintain the water for 50 days?
Mhm,
That's a great
I
point
mean,
too.
I don't understand how. I don't see how people the hell they could survive the journey
I don't either.
in those conditions. I mean, they're so bad. Like, they would.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't. I just don't see. not even 50% of them making it.
No.
A lot of them didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it
So
said
how
that
did
there
you
was
get
100
12
million.
people? Yeah, how'd you get 12 million people to America if the conditions were bad and you have
Well,
pirates in the sea?
well,
It makes you wonder.
it was over a 400-year period, so it was accumulation, if you will. I mean, but now you make a great point.
No, I mean, 400 years is a long time.
It's a long
That
time.
is a long time. But
It's a
again,
long time.
again, the
America's
Berber
only
pirates, the Berber pirates were taking European people for 400 years too,
That's true.
prior to 1492.
It's true.
Because they ruled in Spain in the 700s. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it just makes you wonder. You know what I mean? They've always, a lot of Pan-African historians always state that this was written in reverse to make it seem
Mhm.
as if. But here's the biggest thing about it too: we already had billions of people here in the Americas, which were the indigenous Aborigines.
This is true as
So
well.
why would you be bringing people from Africa when you realize you got a billion people already here? That makes no sense to spend the money, the ships, and the time when you already have a billion people here ready to go. And they already know the lands. Think about it. People in Africa, when they came over here in these so-called ships, they didn't understand. They all spoke different languages. See what I'm saying? So they couldn't communicate with each other. So how could they work together, right?
Well,
But when you have people already here that already know the land, right? That plays a problem. That plays a role, I believe.
well, to what you speak on, so part of the theory was too, while they took the Africans from over there to everything that you were just talking about the indigenous people that were already here. So when they brought the Africans over here, right, you're right, they spoke different languages. So how could they communicate? One of the things was one of their their points was why they did that to bring them from over there to here was that you figure you are snatched from your homeland and you are taken to a whole completely different place. You're not going to know that place. So their theory, their thought process was thinking like, so we bring them over here, they're not going to have any place to go because they don't know the land. Like, so part of the problem with the indigenous people that were already here, the reason why they could not subject them to that is because they knew the land. They knew where to go, they knew where to hide, they knew everything about the country, but the Africans that they brought over did not. So they had no place to go. So you understand what I'm saying? So they weren't
I understand what you're saying, but
they weren't going
again,
to run away, to that.
right.
And so they met the ones that they tried to force into slavery here. There was much resistance, and they realized that they were not going to win that battle, if you will, with the people that were already here. Now that was part of their thinking.
Yeah, the Black Seminoles in Florida, they were
Mm-hmm.
primarily African people and
Mm-hmm.
primarily indigenous people, which the Black Seminoles came together as one, which migration. But at the same time, like I said, my point is I don't believe there were 12 million slaves brought from Africa because it's not feasible. It doesn't make any sense when you have people already here. And you're right that it was damn difficult for them to enslave the indigenous Aborigines, but they were still outnumbered. And the Tuileries, right? The Tuileries. They were able to bring guns when we were still dealing with bow and arrows. You see what I'm saying? So I mean, and you think about it too. When you start looking to the indigenous Aborigines of this continent or of the United States itself, there were tribes who don't even exist anymore.
Well, also, I mean, I'm not saying this is true. Just thinking here. We had diseases, right? And the Africans had a lot more. They were introduced to Europeans way before I think the Indians over here in America was, and they can handle the diseases the Europeans had. And maybe when they came over here looking for slaves, they were focusing on the Africans because the indigenous people were dying when they came in contact with them.
They killed the disease killed the majority of them.
But it wasn't killing the Africans though.
No.
Yeah,
no.
That's a valid point.
That's
a valid point.
Yeah.
And that could be a reason, one of the big reasons why they brought the black slaves over to America.
But yeah, I mean, my whole point is I don't believe they brought 12 million slaves. I do believe there were some that were brought over here, but 12 million over 400 years, and then to still have a billion other people here in the United States, like I said, and then the things going on in the Atlantic, I just want to kind of step outside that, because again, this is our normal. What half of this is in here. What we're reading right now is in our school books. It's in our school books, but there's no narrative outside of that. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious to know. Like I said, I got to do some more research on this. But
so why do you think they would want to say that narrative is true and that they didn't bring the blacks over on the Middle Passage and that they were already here. Why do you think they want to cover that up?
Why would they want to cover that up?
Why
Well,
would they want
because
to make you think that that the Africans weren't here?
the power that they think they have, it's always about manipulation, right? If you make somebody believe you have more power, just like what's the Genghis Khan, this his theories and or the art of war. If you always can make people believe you have more power than what you really have, then you would continue to maintain that power, right? So if you have these big ships, the Santa Maria, and it was this and it was that, and you had 500 slaves on a particular ship, then you're kind of putting your power out there. You're stating that we have the power to do these things, right? Um, but I don't believe they do. There's even been some documentation that the ships weren't that big. And matter of fact, even Columbus, when he went to West Indies, he was lost. So his trip probably took longer than expected, right? Because of the currents and again, they didn't always understand astrology like the Africans did. You see what I'm saying? But he was lost when he came to America. He didn't know where he was going, and he just happened to land in the West Indies. And then that's why the people here in the country of United States or Turtle Island, that's why they were called Indians, because of the West Indies concept of him landing here. But I think it's always about manipulation. You know, if you make somebody think you have some more than what you really do, then they're less. You become more powerful. You know, that's what I believe. But 12 million people were 4 year period when you had Europeans being enslaved also by other countries as well too. Again, how would these ships not being attacked? You know what I mean, in the sea. You know, coming from Africa when again you had people in Africa attacking Europe. You know, so I just this is the common narrative that I've always heard, you know, and I've heard recently of some different things based upon some research. So I got to do more research on my end, but I just don't think they took 12 million people and brought them here because there's already people here.
Well, it's
And
certainly.
even declassification, like people think that the copper colored Indians are the original Aborigines, and they're not. They're from Siberia. They're from upper into Canada. The Aborigines were dark people. They were black people here. You know what I mean? And so when you start looking into the diaries and the script, I say not sculptures, but sketches that were made, they were dark skinned people. The people of the copper colored Indians, they were from Siberia and they were basically conquered by the Mongols. And that's what makes them a lighter colored people because the copper colors, because the black and the Mongols got together, you know, in a sense, or when the Mongols came to conquer the United States or the Turtle Island at one point in time. You know,
Well,
so
that's
even the
no. Go ahead,
go
King.
ahead, no, go ahead. That was it. That was it.
No, you know your point of view is certainly one that needs to be looked into. I'm curious as well to the thought process into what you're saying because hey, you got to question everything. You got to
You do.
question everything
Yeah, you do.
on what what the narrative. And I never looked at it from that point of view because the pirates were prominent at that time. You know, the history of the Middle Passage, if you will, was 400 years. You know, the numbers. I'm not sure, but it's something that's definitely worthy of a discussion. No
Yeah.
doubt about it. You
Yeah, I
know.
mean, they just like they never tell you about the rebellions that happened here. Like, why don't they tell you about rebellions if they happened 400 years ago? Because
Hmm.
if you give people a sense of power, right? If you
Hmm.
take their power away to make them feel enslaved, and they came here and should be thankful that they're here, then you're always going to be thankful, and you're never going to use any type of aggression against those particular people, right? Because you
Hmm.
should be thankful. That's the
Hmm.
manipulation, right?
Hmm.
But it's again, but you never talk about the great rebellions because if you talk about rebellions, you know, I remember going to see the Nat Turner, or there was a show, I think Nat Turner, and when I went to the movie theater, there's a very diverse group of people in there. Well, people
Hmm.
didn't like seeing black slaves killing the white slave masters in the movie.
Hmm.
It was
Hmm.
because of the power that people believe that they have, right?
Hmm.
You know, so that's what I think it is that it's the power that prevents black people from attacking others is because we should be thankful we were brought here to live in a better world in some
Hmm.
sense or the new world. But if you realize we were already here, that might change the concept. Or you realize the rebellions that went on, there were millions of rebellions that went on
Hmm.
here
Hmm.
in the Turtle Island or United States, but we're not told about those. So we're not
That's
told
true.
really about the truth because the truth will what it will set us free,
That's right.
right? Or it will set anybody free.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, right there, King. I tell you what, we have one chapter left, We're gonna stop it right there on page 154.
I can
154.
talk too much, y'all. I can
No, no,
talk
no,
too
no, no,
much.
no. It's a great conversation because we got one chapter left. This we can pick up right here and end it with the last chapter we got left, which will make another great podcast as well. No, that's beautiful. And those theories, listen, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. But great podcast. Again, the information in the book is awesome. You know, as we say, pick up a book and read and things are just not what they seem. The narrative is it should be questioned. It should be looked into. It should be looked into. There are things out there that, as King Mac was just saying, that we are not taught, that we are not told for a specific reason. And as we have taken this short journey, we are coming to see that things are not as they should be, or what is now was what not what it once was. For
Yeah, you're
dang
right.
sure. For dang sure.
You know,
So
when you guys read these, start reading books and start learning history, definitely reading with an open mind. I mean, have your
yes,
beliefs, but
yes,
make sure to challenge your beliefs too. If you come across something in a book and it challenges your original belief, follow that through.
absolutely. You're going to be amazed. I promise you
Yes.
that. You're going to be amazed. Again, picking up this year's origins of Africa, but look, we've covered military, we've covered religion to a in-depth degree, and it's just doing with the topic of one country, but highlighting how that one country plays a role in the very essence of humanity itself, which has been denied over and over and over again, as they say, savages win everything, everything, as far as I'm concerned, has come or originated to some degree in Africa.
And that's what brought us here reading the book. We were reading about religion originally.
Yes,
We were reading
Yeah.
about religion last year. So we weren't even reading into anything
yes,
African, anything. And then as we started reading books like from Albert Churchward and Mr. Dr. French, we started
mhm,
learning like they were repeatedly stating that you need to go back to Africa to understand
yes,
religion or spirituality. And so that's what has brought us here to this day is reading these ancient kingdoms because
hmm
this is the origination of spirituality and religion,
hmm
you know.
absolutely, absolutely. That was a great conversation, King. Like I said, we'll stop at 154, 155, and tie that into the last chapter next week, and that'll be the end of African Glory. I guess I need to bring up the next book we'll be covering. But King, hit us with that spotlight.
Kings, kings, kings. For our podcast, I present to you the Black Panthers with both their achievements and the controversy because their history is more complex than their supporters or their critics sometimes portray. So last week, we discussed the White Panther Party. We're going to discuss the Black Panther Party today. So the Black Panther Party was founded in October of 1966 in Oakland by Huey Newton and Bobby Seals. The organization emerged during a time of segregation, discrimination, police brutality, complaints in black communities, urban poverty, and civil rights movement activism. Their original focus was monitoring police interactions with black citizens. California law at the time allowed people to open carry firearms, and Panthers often illegally carried weapons while observing police activity. The party created a famous 10-point program which called for freedom and self-determination, employment opportunities, decent housing, quality education, fair treatment under the law, and an end to police brutality. The community programs, many people remembered the Black Panthers for firearms, but they also ran extensive community programs. So free breakfast programs for children, community health clinics, sickle cell testing, food distribution, educational programs, and elderly assistance. Their free breakfast program for thousands of children and later influenced the public school district to establish free meals within the public schools. Growth and national attention by the 1960s, chapters existed across the United States. The Black Panthers became one of the most visible black political organizations in American history. You had Huey Newton, Bobby Seals, Fred Hampton, Ellen Brown, and Eldridge Cleaver. The Panthers quickly became a target for the FBI COINTEL program. The FBI viewed the Panthers as a major internal security threat. Government actions included surveillance, informants, infiltration, arrests, attempts to create division within the organization. which we just read about the same stuff. Anyway, internal problem. They had some internal problems. Also struggled with leadership disputes, criminal allegations, financial difficulties, ideology divisions, and violence involving certain chapters. By 1970s, many leaders were in prison, exiled, killed, or had left the organization. The Black Panther Party gradually declined throughout the 1970s and effectively ceased operations as a national organization by 1980s. The Black Panther Party was born in October in 1966 out of the frustration with inequality, police brutality, and economic hardship. Armed with both rifles and social programs, the Black Panthers became one of the most influential and controversial organizations in American history. Though the party itself faded by the early 1980s, debates over its legacy continues today, touching on race, policy, community empowerment, government surveillance, and the meaning of justice in America. I also want to note too, I was doing some research on this as well, and I think this is something to understand, that there are 800 hate groups in America, and not one of them are black or black organized.
Let that sink in. That's wild.
There's 800 hate groups. There's no hate groups that are ran by black people, is what you're saying?
No. Only one they give some type of cause to, they give it black, kind of like black nationalists, would be the Muslims. But that's really about it. They talk about older ones that no longer exist, but there are no true hate groups, black hate groups out there.
And what about, I mean, just a few years ago, I was seeing all these black groups that were out in cities having white people bow down to them, kiss their feet, and all this stuff.
No
that was here in the States.
There, from what I understand, I Googled it and chatted it. From what I understand, there are no black hate groups. I don't know what that was, maybe, but their state there's none. There's no black hate groups. The closest thing to it would be the Muslims, but and you have
Muslims not a hate group.
That's what I said.
No,
I said
Muslims not a hate group. That's a huge religion.
That's what I said. That's the closest thing to what they would call a hate group is what is the Muslims, but that's really about it. They brought up some other stuff, the Pan-Africans, but they brought the Black Panthers, but there's nothing modern. There's no modern hate groups, if you would say.
Wow. All right, Kings. Rest of the chapter 16 on into chapter 17. That'll be the end of African Glory. Our next book will be, I think I said this, will be this one. The Stories of the Moors in Spain will be our next book.
Okay.
After this. So, that's a great podcast, Kings. Great podcast. Closing remarks, gentlemen. Closing remarks.
I love you guys.
Yeah, love you, Kings.
That's right. Nothing but love for you, Kings. Nothing but love for you. Thank you all for joining us for Sunday Book Club. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this with someone who values meaningful conversation. And join us next Sunday as we continue building through wisdom, experience, and purpose. King Christopher, take us out of here, King.
As always, we want you guys to have faith, trust in your own power, believe deeply in your purpose, build unshakable confidence through action, and have dedication. Show up when no one's watching. Stand firm in your commitment to grow. Put in the reps mentally, physically, and daily. And discipline, forge your character with consistency. Set your code and follow it without compromise. Control your impulses and command your results.
Love you guys. Peace, Kings.
Yes, sir. Love you, Kings.
Love you.